28B, last few.
Good morning.
Good morning, Gary. So we had two invalidations. One is when you have the wrong intent, eat it, or the altar should eat it outside of its place. That invalidates it, but does not get one kares. Having the wrong intention to eat it, or the altar to consume it outside of the right time, that is what we generally refer to as pigel, and that does get kares. After a number of expositions of where that's learned out from, the Gemara decided to learn it out from the elongated verse in Parshas Tzav, and we're going through one by one all the words there and interpreting them. So the last thing we did was lo yeratza. It's not going to be appeasing. It's not going to be accepted. Ki hartzaz kosher, kein hartzaz psul. Just like it has to be kosher, it has to be invalid. What does that mean? Uma hartzaz kosher achi akribu kol matiro. The only way the offering is going to be valid is if you get through all the services, including the main one is the throwing of the blood. That now permits it to be eaten, permits it to be consumed by the altar. Av hartzas psul. So too, to invalidate it, you have to go through all the services. So let's say at step one, shrita, you had in mind you're going to eat the offering outside of the right time. But then before you threw the blood, let's say that all the blood spilled. So you never got to that final step of throwing the blood. That's not going to be pigel. You have to go through all the steps in order for the sacrifice to be considered pigel. Hamakriv, the hakrava hu nifsal, the ein nifsal b'shlishi. So the one who brings it is the one who brings it. If he has the wrong thought, that's going to invalidate it. But not if you just happen to eat it on the third day. The Gemara's interesting thought that the verse comes to teach you, you would have thought that maybe a guy that just eats it on the third day, that's also outside of the right time, and that would be invalidation. Which the Gemara says, no, it's only someone who thinks about it, eating it at the wrong time, causes a invalidation. Okay. Oh, so you're going to eat it. Says the Gemara, the Einu Medaber becoming. Oh, so is referring to it. It is referring to the sacrifice, and not referring to the person who brings the sacrifice. Lo yechashev, it's not going to be considered, or we're not going to have other. Here means we're not going to have other intentions. Lachshov is to think. So here, lo yechashev says the Gemara on the next page. Lo ye'arev bo machshavos acherus. You can't mix in any other thoughts, and this is what we learned: is that pigel has to be the only one that's going to invalidate. If you have other invalid thoughts, which we're going to see more about on the Mishnah on the next page coming up, so that's not going to be invalidation. Yeah, the verse continues. Pigel, the word pigel there, we already taught that the third day teaches you outside of the right time. So what does the word pigel mean? That's referring to outside of the right place. Then the verse says, yeah, it will be. If you have half a kazayas of pigel you have in mind to eat outside of the right time, and half a kazayas you have in mind to eat outside of the right place, they do combine to invalidate the sacrifice. Now, do you get kares? No. You have to have a kazayas you're planning to eat outside of the right time. Does it matter which one you had in mind first? That's going to be the next page. That's going to be the Mishnah. Maybe yeah, maybe not. So then the verse ends off saying, the hanefesh ha'ocheles mimenu, the one who eats from it, echad velo shnayim. So only one of them, only one person who eats one of these violations will get kares, not both violations. Which violations are referring to? Be'ezu zel chutz lizmano, the gomer avan avan minosar, the damer lebezav. We learn that the one that gets kares is eating it outside of the right time, because it's learned out of Gzeira Shava, Avon, the word Avon, the word sin, and Avon, sin, is learned out of Gzeira Shava from Nosar. Nosar is a sacrifice that was left over after its prescribed time. That's called Nosar. You have to burn it. So we learn Gzeira Shava from there because this is very similar to Nosar, Zav. The acronym Zav. Zav stands for Zman. Both Nosar and outside of the right time have to do with Zman, and Beis is Bama. They both, even when you can bring out sacrifice on a Bama, these two are still invalidations. So they're similar. That's why you're going to learn it out from Nosar, that the one who gets kares is Chutz Lizmanu, outside of the right time. Amalei Rav Papa the Rava. Says Rav Papa to Rava, is all Rava. Rava is expanding this verse to teach us that it's referring to outside the right place, outside the right time, and that it's referring to only the sacrifice, not the person is invalid. And it teaches us that only one of them gets kares. Who's that? The one who has in mind to eat the sacrifice outside of the right time, and then you go through all the stages, it becomes pigul, and if you eat it, it's kares. So Rav Papa says to Rava, Lididach, according to you, Shlishi de Parshas Kedoshim Tiyu, my derash today. What do you need? Remember, Parshas Kedoshim is a very similar verse. If you eat on the third day, it's pigul. So what do you need on the third day for? You already learned pigul from Parshas Tzav. That's 12 chapters earlier. So what does the third day in Parshas Kedoshim teach you? So my derash today, Ahumi Baile Lemakoim Shihiyah Misholosh Bedam Bebaser Beimur. It's interesting. Even though the third day usually refers to time, but here Gemara says when you have in mind to eat it in the wrong place, the only way it's going to be invalid is if you have in mind a place that has Misholosh, has all of these three qualifications. It's a place that sometimes can consume blood, can consume the meat, can consume the other sacrificial parts. So Rashi speaks out that if you're talking about Kachei Kadashim, the holiest sacrifices, so if you have in mind to eat them outside of the courtyard, because outside of the courtyard, you can eat other less holy sacrifices, but it's still a place that you could have sacrifices. If you're talking about Kachim Kalim, less holy sacrifices, so then even if you have in mind to eat it outside of Yerushalayim, that's still a place where sometimes you could build a bama, a mount, and bring a sacrifice. And you can bring the blood, and the sacrifice is there, and that would also be invalid. What's the case that if you have in mind the wrong place, it's not going to be invalid? At least it won't be pigul. So that Rashi says, if you have in mind you're going to eat it inside the heichal, inside the Holy of Holies. In that area, you never consume meat, and you never bring up the sacrificial parts. So that's an area where you never have these three things: eating the meat, bringing the blood, or sacrificing the sacrificial parts. So if you have in mind that, it won't be considered this invalidation. Is it another invalidation? I don't know. I don't know what happens to it if you have that in mind. It's not this invalidation. Is it another invalidation? Doesn't sound like it. So only if you have in mind the wrong place, either outside the courtyard or outside of Yerushalayim, those are places that could have these three. Inside the heichal, the holy area, you never have eating of meat or any sacrificial parts, and therefore that's not going to be this invalidation. Okay, so that's what he does with the word three in Parshat Kedoshim. Jules, you see where we are?
The end of 29.
29. Yeah. Oh, you got it? The tape
right here.
Very good. The tape of clay. Okay. So says the Gemara, tape of clay mikra kama. Why don't you learn this out from the first verse in Parshas Tzav? It says in he'achol ya'achol. So it says if you eat it, and then it says with ahavke rachmana b'lashon shlishi, and it uses also. It says there the number 3. So maybe learn that out from Parshas Tzav and you don't have to learn it out from Parshas Kedoshim. Yeah. So why do you need Parshas Kedoshim? Just use Parshas Tav. Amar Rav Ashi, Amrisa l'shmai tekemei de Rav Masna. Rav Ashi said, I asked this question to Rav Masna, and he told me like this: Amar le ime hasam. If I only had the verse in Parshas Tav, and I didn't have the verse in Parshas Kedoshim, I would have come to an erroneous conclusion. To which I need Parshas Kedoshim to teach me that, so I will not come to an erroneous conclusion. What would be the erroneous conclusion? Ime hasam havim. If I only had Parshas Tav, where it says Shlishi, number 3, hava mina Shlishi prat pigul klal. You could have interpreted the verse that the number 3 tells you you have to have it in a specific place that has all these 3 components. Pigul then adds on. Now, anything is pigul, and it would come to add. V'nase klal, it becomes a general. You have a specific thing, and then a rule, which teaches you klal mosif ala prat, that the rule will add on to the detail. The israbu shara makomis. If I only had that verse, I could have thought that Shlishi teaches me only an area that has these 3 things, that you can eat the meat, bring up sacrificial parts, and throw the blood. But then the word pigul would be in addition. Anything would be pigul, which would include, you would have thought, the rest of the places. Kamash Malan is coming to teach you that you need Parshas Kedoshim, where it only says Shlishi. Funny, it says they're pigul also. That's interesting. It says they're pigul also. That's interesting. If you only had Parshas Kedoshim, then you would not say that pigul is adding on to Shlishi. Why not? I don't know. This would be deserving of a footnote if I were writing the article. Maybe pigul that teaches you something else.
Third applies to the outside of it. It's only 2 places with equal quality, not inside the temple.
Yeah, I know. Back to our reading competition was fast. Yeah, okay. So the Gemara assumes that once you have Parshas Kedoshim, where it says Shlishi, and you only know that it's a place that has to have these 3 qualifications, and not anything. Our question is, but the same problem you had in Parshas Tav, it says pigul afterwards, you have in Parshas Kedoshim too. That's food for thought, or maybe food for over breakfast. Fine. So it says in Parshas Tav you're going to eat from the meat of the sacrifice of the shlamim. So now, if you want to get someone to listen, here's the expression used. Amar Rabbi Elazar, kof oznechal l'shmoa. Bend your ear to listen. Yeah, listen carefully. So he wants to know like this. Basically, he's going to ask, in this verse, how literal can we take this verse? Maybe it means if someone just eats the meat on the 3rd day, that's considered a pigul. That's going to be his question. Who told you that it's referring to somebody who has in mind to eat the meat on the 3rd day? Maybe it means somebody who's actually going to eat the meat on the 3rd day. And it's come out a funny thing that until the 3rd day, it was totally fine sacrifice. And now when you eat it on the 3rd day, retroactively, it's going to be considered a pigul. That might be the most literal reading of the verse. So he asks him, Amar Lazar, bend your ear to listen. Bend your ear because it might not be the most logical way to read this verse, but maybe it's the simplest way. That it's talking about somebody who eats the meat on the 3rd day. Sorry. Is it talking about someone who thinks to eat on the 3rd day? Someone actually eats it on the 3rd day. So that's right. So Amras, he told him, Achashu, kosher. He asked her, you posel? First of all, logically, well, what kind of business is this? You did all the services, you threw the blood, everything is good. Now you eat it on the third day, so retroactively it becomes an invalid sacrifice. It was good up until now. How do you retroactively nullify a sacrifice? So, says Rabbi Akiva, relax. I can find you a case. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Hein matzinu bezav bezava, v'shomer yom keneged yom. Shem b'chesed tahara, v'keven shros sasru. So ba'afata al titma al zeh. She'afal bi shehuksher she'yachzer v'yipasal. We know that you have certain emissions where if they're consecutive days, then you have to start seeing clean days. Azavak Tana, Azavak Dol, whatever it is. So you're seeing nowadays, or nowadays women, so you see 1 clean day, 2 clean day, 3 clean day. Oh, 4th day, she sees again an emission, she sees blood. Now what happens? All the clean days get knocked out. You got to restart the count again. Day 1, day 2, day 3 were totally fine. And now what happened? Day 4, something happens, and it nullifies the previous 3. So too here. What's your question? It was fine, day 1, fine, day 2, the sacrifice was good. Oh, day 3, you eat it, it nullifies it. So Amrle told him back, Amrlo, Harehu Omer Hamakriv. The reason why you don't interpret it so literally is because it says Hamakriv. Bishas Hakravahu Nifsal, the Eino Nifsal, the Shlishi. It says Hamakriv, the one who brings it. At the time you're bringing it is the invalidation. That's one way to read the verse. Oh, Eino Omer Hamakriv, Elazek Kohen Hamakriv. Maybe you'll think, what's invalid? It will be an invalidation on the Kohen. So how do you read the verse? The time of the bringing will cause invalidation, or the Kohen who brings this sacrifice, he will be invalid. If the Kohen has a pigul thought, an improper thought, he himself will be invalid. Which one is it? Says the Gemara. Okay, Kishu Omer Oso. When the verse says it, who's it? The sacrifice. Oh, so it's referring to an invalidation in the sacrifice, not in the person. Also, it's talking about a sacrifice, and I'm talking about the Kohen. Now, parenthetically, the Gemara jumps in. This word "oso," Ben Aza uses for something else. There's a little bit of parentheses. Ben Aza Omer "oso." You know what "oso" is needed for? Ma Talmud Lomar, Lefi Shenamar Los Acher L'Shalmo. There's a special halacha, important nowadays to tzedakah pledges, but back then it was the sacrifices. Once you pledge to bring a sacrifice, you can't delay. There's a big debate in Rosh Hashanah. What's considered delaying? 1 holiday, 2 holidays, or 3 holidays? One you consider late. So I think we hold, if I'm not correct, 3 holidays once that year has passed. So yeah. So you would have thought, just like lo ta'achar l'shamo, your neder to Hashem, make sure you bring it up. You would have thought yachol af me'achar nidro below yeratza. So you would have thought so too. Maybe this guy who you would have thought that someone who delays the sacrifice, he waits 3 holidays to bring it. Once he brings it after the 4th holiday, after a year later. So this year, Sukkot, he offers to bring a neder, a sacrifice as a voluntary offering, and then a year passes, and now it's already it's not a Sukkot of 2026, but it's Pesach of 2027. The guy comes, he's a year plus late. Do you still accept his offering? You would have thought it's not accepted, to which it says, Talam Oso. Only this offering, pigul, lo yeratza, is not accepted. But not a person who delays the sacrifice. So you need this word oso to teach you that somebody who delays a sacrifice it'll still be accepted. Acherim, or others say, lo yechashe. The verse says you should not have these improper intents. B'machshavahu nifsal. Ve'eno nifsal b'shlishi. So they're answering our earlier question. It says lo yechashe. Clearly, the verse is telling us that it's the thought that invalidates, and not the person who eats it on the 3rd day that invalidates. It says lo yechashe. You shouldn't have improper intent. The invalidation is caused by having the wrong intent. and not by eating it on the third day. Usually, yeah. I think Achayim Shomer, yeah. We had a Gemara like that, no? Why is called Achayim?
Yeah.
We had a Gemara like that. He said something controversial, whatever it was. To mention him is not proper. To omit him is not proper. So we'll call him Achayim. Others say. Okay. Now, Ben Azai. Now that Ben Azai uses the word oso, which taught us that it's the invalidation of the sacrifice, not the invalidation of the Kohen. Ben Azai used the word oso to teach you that someone who delays bringing their sacrifice after a year, it's still accepted. Only pillow is not accepted. So how does Ben Azai know that the invalidation is on the sacrifice and not on the Kohen? Maybe the invalidation that the Kohen can no longer serve in the temple. How does he know that? You don't have the word oso, it, modifying this invalidation. So either ibais ema nafkele medacherim, he'll learn it out from where acherim just learned it out. Lo yechashev, if you have the wrong intent. Yeah, he'll learn out from acherim. So Rashi explains from the fact that acherim have to teach us that it's from the fact that acherim teach us that the sacrifice is not invalid if you eat it on the third day. Rather, it's invalid if you have the wrong thoughts. You have a thought to eat on the third day. That invalidates. Clearly, you see that the invalidation is on the sacrifice and not on the Kohen.
It was invalidated almost like from the beginning.
Correct, exactly. Right. What would be the other option? We have a verse teaching you that it's not, whatever it is, it's not invalid if you eat it on the third day. It's only invalid if you think to eat it on the third day. So he's saying now, that's obviously referring to the sacrifice, not to the Kohen. Why? How could you invalidate the Kohen who's going to eat on the third day? He did nothing wrong. He sacrificed, he did everything. What he happened to eat on the third day, so therefore he's going to be invalid. What did he do wrong? Maybe no, sir. But in terms of this, it doesn't. He didn't do anything. He just ate it. So another Kohen eats it. Let's say I bring it and someone else eats it. He's going to now be invalid. What did he do wrong? So clearly, the fact that you need a verse to teach you that it's only the thought to eat on the third that the thought to eat it on the third day invalidates shows you that it's referring to the sacrifice and not the person bringing the sacrifice. That's one place where Ben Azai will learn it from. Or v'bais ema midichsiv lo yerotzu. It's not going to be appeased. Lo yerotzu zivchahu. It will not be appeased is modifying the sacrifice, not the person. If the sacrifice won't be appeased. Okay. Now, uben Azai oso b'lo yerotza. So Ben Azai learns that the word oso teaches you this sacrifice will not be appeased, will not be accepted. But someone who delays the sacrifice after a year, he brings a sacrifice that will be accepted. So he learns it from here. Why not learn it from Achirim? Achirim nafka. Who's Achirim? The Tanya Achirim say, Omrim, they say, Yachli he bechor she'ebrishnaso, a bechor. They have to get the Kohen after the first year. Let's say you don't, and a year has passed, turn the page. You'd have thought, you'd have thought that after a year, it's as if it got a blemish, and it's going to be invalid. Talmud Lomar, no. The verse compares your tithes to the Bechor to teach you. Makish Bechor lemeiser. Nah, meiser in the Mishnah lechaverta. Just like meiser, let's say meiser sheni. You have to bring it on year on years 1, 2, 4, and 5. Meiser sheni, right? Yeah, 1, 2, 4, and 5. But yet, on year 3, you have a special section in the Torah that says you can now bring your meiser, right? That whole section of called the Bir Meiser. It's called the Confession of the Meisters. We say, I did everything that I could do, and now Hashem, please look down upon me positively. That whole section. So what do you see? Even though you can only bring it year 1 and 2, but yet if you bring it on year 3, it's still going to be accepted. So to a Bechor, you have the first year to bring it, but it's still accepted if you bring it after the first year. So too, so what do you see from here? Things that have a deadline, even afterwards, are still accepted. You lost on your mitzvah opportunity to do things at the right time, but you can still bring it. Like Shema, a little bit. Shema, you have Shema until a certain hour of the day to say Shema. If you miss it, so you missed out the mitzvah of saying Shema in the proper time. If you say Shema, you get some points for Shema, that's right. Yeah. So, says the Gemara, no, I needed this verse. I couldn't rely on Bechor. Why? It's a Bechor is not a matter of appeasing. It's not a matter of being accepted. It's not atoning for anything. So maybe that sacrifice, which is not atoning for anything, doesn't appease for anything, just you have to bring it. So it's not coming to atone for anything. So there, if you miss your year, it's still accepted. But an offering that's going to atone for something, maybe you'd have thought that's more stringent. Kamash Malan. That's why you need this verse to teach you that even the sacrifices that you have a year, if you only have a year to bring them, if you delay past the year, it's still going to be accepted. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now says the Gemara of Akasi Mehosam Nafka. You should still learn from that section. You should still learn from a different section in Devarim. Below the Korbanechachet. It says over there that the sin is on you and not in the sacrifice. Meaning that even after, that's talking about bringing your vows, making sure you pledges in on time. And it says, if you don't, the sin is in you, the person, but not on the sacrifice. Even if you bring it past its time, the sacrifice is still valid. So why does Ben Azai use our verse to teach you this, that after the prescribed time is going to be invalid? You have a pretty explicit verse in Devarim saying the sin is in you and not in the sacrifice. Okay. Uben Azai. Number 5. Yeah. Uben Azai. Hahumi Baile. You need that verse something else. But okay, so this prefacing for Donna, I have not had a chance to learn the Agadic understanding of this. So before you attack, give me a chance. Yeah. It says very cryptic. The sin is in you and not in your wife. Okay. What would you have thought? So Achogus Hirashi tells us what exactly the verse coming up is referring to. Rashi learns it's referring to robbery. And I think Tosfos learns it's referring to not bringing your vows on time. That you would have thought that since we have the following teaching, the Amar Rabbi Lazar, V'item Rabbi Yochanan, and some say Rabbi Yochanan, Ein ishto shel adam meisal im kin mevakshim imanu mamon ve'ein lo. A person's wife doesn't die unless they're requesting money from him and he doesn't have. Shinamar, as the verse says, in ein chol shalim, lama yivkach mishkacha mitachtecha, which Rashi understands to mean, is a verse in Mishlei. If you have nothing to pay back with, why did you? If you have nothing to pay back with, lama yikach mishkacha mitachtecha, why was the wife taken from beneath you? Meaning, people are asking for money because you stole from them, and if you don't have what to pay back, so why are you taking my wife from me? Sounds like a wife gets taken from a husband by him stealing. Rashi learns it's referring to him stealing. And Tosfos says, from the Gemara in Shabbos, it sounds like it's making a neder and not keeping it. Yeah. So the Hay Avon Debal Acher Nami Mesa, you would have thought that she would also die by delaying your vows, your sacrifices. To that, the pasuk says, no, the sin is in you and not in your wife. Now, what in the world is the connection between stealing? Acherim Omrim. Why doesn't the husband himself die for stealing? Why should the wife die? What role does she play in either his vows or in his robbery? Does it mean he also dies? And you can ask 1,000 questions. We have to.
The wife might be liable.
The wife is maybe liable too. So it's not only the wife, it's the husband. They're both liable to team robbery. Yeah. Okay. So I definitely know that from reading enough stories about very great people. They're extremely careful about other people's money. Every cent, every penny, they would go to the ends to make sure they never had even a little bit of stealing, nothing. So yeah, it's an important thing. Okay. The machshava hu nifsal and a nifsal b'shlishi. So thinking to eat it on the third day is what's going to invalidate the sacrifice, and not the actual eating on the third day. Rabbi Eliezer, according to him, lo yechashev my avidlei. What does he do with the verse lo yechashev? He needs it for Rabbi Yana. He needs it to teach you that you cannot mix any other intent. You cannot, so either means to think or having an intent. The only intent that's going to get you piggle is the piggle intent. If you have another invalidation, another wrong thought, and then you have a piggle thought, it's not going to invalidate. That's going to be the main topic of the next mission. Rav Mari Masni, Rav Mari learned, Amar Rabbi Yanai, he says, how do you know that having the wrong thought by kachim gets you malchus? This verse, you should not have the wrong thoughts. Sounds like it's extra. Teach you get malchus. Hold on, we know from malchus. Ready? The general rule of thumb is any negative prohibition where you don't do an act. So in this case, you didn't do an act, you did a thought. Does not get you malchus. So how come here you get malchus? Rabbi Huda, must be the opinion of Rabbi Huda, who holds that the Amar Lav Shem Amaisa Lokin Alav. You're right. This interpretation that says Lo Yichashev teaches you that you get malchus having the wrong intent accords with the opinion of Rabbi Huda, who learns that even negative commandments that don't have an action, in this case just a thought, can also get a person malchus. Warn them ahead of time. Yeah. Okay, this mission is just a bunch of cases. There's nothing the same kind of case repeated over and over and over again. So starts off Zehakal, this is a general rule. One who slaughters, who receives, who walks, who throws the blood. Lechol davar, to eat something, shadarko lechol, that's usually eaten, or lahakti davar shadarko lachti, or to sacrifice something which is usually sacrificed. If you do any of the four services, so this is the Pigel Mishnah, 29b, tuck it away in your wallet. Yeah, where's Pigel? 29b in Zbachim. This is the Mishnah. Any of the four services that you have in mind, if you have in mind to chutz l'mkomo, you're going to sacrifice it or you're going to eat it outside the right place. Puzzle the ainbo kares, no kares. Chutz l'zmano, outside the right time, you're going to either sacrifice it or eat it. Pigel, the chayav alav kares. It's pigel and you get kares. Ubilvad sheyak hamatir k'mitzasel. As long as you went through and you mastered, you permitted it. How do you permit it? You throw the blood on. You have to do that throwing the blood on. That now permits it to be brought on the altar or permits you to eat it. The throwing of the blood is like the primary part of the service. If you had the wrong intention beforehand and then the blood spilled and you never got to that step of throwing the blood, it won't be piggled. After that, we had an exposition earlier today. The very thing that we start off with today teaches us this, that it has to be this. Everything would be valid except for this. So you have to follow through with all the services. And if at any point you had that wrong thought, it'll be invalid. Fine. Ketzad. So, karev hamatir kimitzvaso. Fine. So you brought your sacrifice like you're supposed to. However, shachat b'shtika, when you were shechting it, you didn't think anything. So either when you shechted it, you were silent, But then one of the other three services, you had in mind to do these things in the wrong time, to carry, to walk, to throw the blood, or sheshachar chutz lezmano. Let's say your first intention is I'm shechting it to eat the meat outside of the right time in 4 days from now. But then kibel halach v'zarak, you did any of the other three services with no wrong intention. Either you have no wrong intention in the first service and yes, wrong intention in the next three, or you have a wrong intention in the first service and the right intention for the next three, or sheshachat akiba b'halach v'zarak chutz lezmano, or you shechted, or you received, or you walked, or you threw the blood chutz lezmano with the intent to do things outside the right time. Zeu shemakiv hamatir kimitzvasa. That's someone who went through all the services, and therefore if you have a pigul thought after you finished all your services, if at any point you had a pigul thought and you follow through with all the services, then it's going to be invalid. That's all. That what's a case where it's not going to be pigul? Kate says a low karev hamatir kimitzvasa. You didn't do what you're supposed to do. Shachat chutz lemekomo. Let's say when you were shechting, you had in mind you're going to eat it outside the right place, and then in one of the next three services, kibel v'halach v'zarak chutz lezmano. Shechita you had in mind outside the right place, and any of the next three you had in mind outside of the right time. So here begins. You have two wrong intentions. The first service you have one wrong intention, which is not kares. The next three you have another wrong intention, which is kares. Or the other way, sheshachar chutz lezmano. Your first service was outside the right time, and then the next three was outside the right place. The zarak chutz lemekomo, or sheshachar akiba b'halach v'zarak chutz lemekomo. You had the wrong intent to eat outside the right time by any of the four services. You had the wrong intent to eat outside the right place, or the Pesach and the Chatas, the two things that are first mission and Zevachim. If you have intent for another sacrifice, it invalidates it. Sheshachtan shelo lishman. So you had that invalid thought in the beginning when you shechted it. The kibel v'halach v'zarak chutz lezmano. But the next three services, you had the wrong intent to eat it outside the right time. The same thing, wrong intent A and then wrong intent B. Oh, sheshachar chutz lezmano v'kibel v'halach v'zarak shelo lishman. Or the first sacrificial, when you're slaughtering it, you had in mind the wrong outside the right time, and the next three you had in mind for a different sacrifice. Or sheshachar akiba b'halach v'zarak daman shelo lishman, or you just had the wrong intent during any of the four services. Zeu shelo karev hamatir kimitzvasa. That is not considered something which will subject you to pigul, because you're having other invalid thoughts. You have to only have a pigul invalid thought, no other invalid thoughts.